You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built for us.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Well, we got some news. We got some OTAs that went down yesterday. Very excited about it. Been waiting, and we finally got it. So I want to go through that. Matt LaFleur made some comments, so we'll go through a little bit of that. And we'll see where that leaves us, I suppose. First of all, we'll start with injuries and attendance. Several players stayed with the rehab group today. That included Zach Tom, Lucas Van Ness, Ketan Oladapo, Alex Magoo, Emmanuel Wilson, and Tyler Davis. Tucker Kraft apparently was doing nothing, so he's injured, but not with the rehab group, apparently, which I guess makes sense if there's nothing really to rehab there. Lucas Van Ness broke the tip of his thumb, which has been all the rage. No need to elaborate, but that's the situation. Elton Jenkins apparently not present at practice. Josh Jacobs was practicing today, but he was limited. He was doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of a half practice day, I guess, for him. Starting offensive line today, given all the people that were missing, we had Rasheed Walker at left tackle. They put Jordan Morgan in at left guard to replace Elton Jenkins. Then it was Josh Myers, Sean Ryan, and Andre Dillard at right tackle. Second unit was Caleb Jones at left tackle. Then it was Jennings, Monk, Telford, and Tenuta. Gunners on punt team, Bo Melton and Corey Ballantyne got first rep there. That was followed by Malik Heath and Keyshawn Nixon. Xavier McKinney once again working as a personal protector. Personal protector, by the way, I believe is the, that guy that's kind of close to the punter. Last line of defense kind of guy. That guy. Some other personnel news. Corey Ballantyne got some looks at nickel with the number 2s. Starting defense up front was Cox, Slayton, Wyatt, and Kingsley Enagbare. Also had the same setup with the safeties being Xavier McKinney and Anthony Johnson, but Bullard apparently very quickly came in and substituted for Johnson. Similarly, at linebacker, you had Quay Walker, McDuffie, and Wilson, and Edrin Cooper came in very quickly to replace Eric Wilson. So already by week 2, it's kind of for show, go out for a play or two and then just very quickly get yanked and the new guys go in. Also worth noting, Bullard, to my knowledge, has not taken any snaps in the slot. So as of now, zero indication that that's a thing. Anders Carlson went 4 for 4 on field goals with makes from 41, 45, 47, and 49. He made 6 of 7 overall. His only miss was 51 yards into the wind. Jack Podlesny went 1 of 4 with a make from 44 and misses from 42, 46, and 50. Podlesny was 3 for 7 overall, but rallied to make his last 2. Greg Joseph did not kick today. Some of the notes from the actual practice itself. Brenton Cox all over Bo Melton on an end around. Colby Wooden got some time playing as a defensive end. Quay Walker all over an inside run by A.J. Dillon. Deslin Alexander just smoked Caleb Jones for a would-be sack. Edrin Cooper draws praise from the coaches on an ultra-fast blitz on the inside. Kingsley Enagbare with a deflection at the line of scrimmage in the 2-minute drill with the ones. Also in 2-minute drill, second-team offense led by Sean Clifford struggled. First-team offense led by Jordan Love also struggled with a batted pass by Enagbare and a drop by Wicks. Third-team offense was led by Michael Pratt, looked really good, but ended with a pass breakup by Zion Gilbert. A lot of talk about Michael Pratt. A lot of praise, I'll say, for Michael Pratt and his ability to throw the football, which, again, not super surprised by it. So that was more or less it. There's another really good highlight about Christian Watson out there breaking ankles, but I think for the most part, if you had to, the biggest winner is everybody that didn't end up injured. That's always a good thing as you see the news reports coming in from other teams, consistently seeing this guy hobbled off or whatever. It makes you kind of nervous, even with very limited to almost nearly zero contact. Crazy stuff happens, but if you had to pick, a winner, I think the defense kind of won the day. Not super important, but again, it's just good either way to get the reports about guys out there moving around, flying around, looking good. Again, you on one hand you think it doesn't matter, but then on the other hand, as I mentioned, last week with the Chicago Bears, you got reports about it was bad, but we're learning. We're still growing. We're getting. That's not what you're hearing in Green Bay. It's, man, he looks good. He's really fast. He's this. We're so happy to have this person and that person, and it's just a very different. I think the Packers are in a different place where, although they're young, it's sort of a veteran group that's ready to play at a high level right now. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be bumps along the road. There's going to be all kinds of that stuff. That's always going to come with it. And they're still a relatively young team where there might be a couple extra bumps, but these are some good football players. Before we get to the press conferences, a couple NFL news and notesy things. First of all, the Jets picked up Tariq Cohen. The only reason it's really very interesting is they did it because they needed not even needed, they picked him up to be a kick returner, even though they have some decent prospects. But they felt it was so important because of the new rule changes that they wanted to go out and get somebody that they felt was one of the best at it. In fact, Robert Saleh talked and said that he believes that the new kickoff rules will result in over 100 returns. He's talking about for an individual team. I think it might have been Ari Mirov, I can't remember, but he had put that in perspective and said the Packers actually had the most returns last year. I want to say the number, I know it was in the 30s, so let's call it 39. Imagine that. Now, that might be a massively inflated number, but still, to say that we think it's at least possible to have over, at or around 100 returns, more than double the amount. So we think it's so important we got to go out and get a guy like Tariq Cohen. I think that really speaks to where a lot of teams are at right now. Saleh also talked about the OTA thing. I just bring that up for the sake of we just talked about the Jets, but a lot of coaches honestly have. Matt LaFleur as well, we'll get to that, but not a fan of the idea of removing OTAs and just extending training camp. Again, I don't know how much details they're aware of, but from what they know, it sounds like the consensus among coaches is, first of all, there's nothing I can do about it. It's going to happen, and we'll deal with it. But number two, not a fan, don't like it, we shouldn't do it. Speaking of kickoff rules, the Lions also talked a little bit about the fact that they've been doing a lot of experimentation. This is kind of a learn-on-the-fly thing, so they've been dedicating a lot of time with special teams coordinator Dave Phipp trying to test various different alignments and schemes and whatnot to try to get ahead. I just hope the Packers are also doing this. When you've got teams like the Jets who are specifically going out and getting players for kick returns, and you have teams like the Lions who are dedicating a massive amount of manpower and time working on schemes and alignments and everything else, trying to get out in front of this thing that is going to have a big impact on the NFL, on scoring, on field position. This is not one of those things you want to be left behind on. As far as the Vikings, they signed Dalton Reisner back to a 1-year deal. Not massive news, but it's Viking news, so why not? I know there's still a lot of talk about Justin Jefferson. Every time I hear it, I always I have that urge to be like, oh man, here we go. And I have to kind of temper that back down and realize they're going to sign the freaking guy. It's really not a question. I think this is just media people doing media stuff. But if anything concrete comes out about complications with the contract with Justin Jefferson, we'll take a little closer look at that. Final note, NFL-wide, Isaiah Buggs of the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been having some problems lately, is facing 2 misdemeanor warrants issued by Tuscaloosa police for second-degree cruelty to dogs. Buggs is accused of leaving 2 dogs locked on his property with no access to food and water. I don't know what's going on with the Chiefs, man, but they're having a lot of issues. And funny enough, in a very not funny situation, he hasn't even taken a snap for the Chiefs yet. Isaiah Buggs played 3 years for Pittsburgh, 2 years for Detroit, and something about as soon as he gets there and puts on a jersey, I don't know. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back. We'll hear from Matt LaFleur and some of the players and what they had to do, and we'll get up out of here. We'll take a break. Patreon.com/pack_daddies where you can support the podcast. If you can do so for as little as $1 a day, it's unbelievable the low cost of supporting such a phenomenal product. Please consider it. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built-for-us.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end,
What will I become? Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
The world's most exciting podcast, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, New York Times best-selling author and National Radio Hall of Fame inductee, Michael Savage.
I'm Michael Savage, host of the Savage Nation podcast, home of borders, language, and culture. Hear my new podcast each week as I speak with top guests from around the world. Right now, we have over 700 shows in our library, featuring interviews with world leaders, scientists, faith teachers, and more, including President Donald Trump, Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, Jerry Falwell, and so much more conversations and commentary you cannot find anywhere else. Other guests have included Samuel Cohen, the father of the neutron bomb, Breitbart's Alex Marlow, the great author Peter Schweitzer, Colonel Douglas McGregor. Be here or be nowhere. The Savage Nation Podcast.
Catch the Michael Savage Podcast on all podcast platforms every Tuesday and every Friday.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
All right, let's get into the Matt LaFleur Q&A here. Starts off right off the bat getting into the whole NFLPA nonsense.
Report that the NFLP would like to move training camp into June, July, and get rid of all this stuff. As a coach, what do you think of that idea?
I would not be in favor of that, but we'll adjust, I guess, if that's what they want to do. I go back to the COVID year. I don't think that was good for anybody. There's not a lot of time we get with these guys anyways, and just to cram everything in at the beginning of training camp, I think it's particularly bad for, I would say, a lot of undrafted guys, because you just don't have the time to invest in the process and learn the playbook, or so I don't think it would be good for the game personally, but I don't think they really care what I have to say.
Well, first of all, he's probably right, which is unfortunate, because this is exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody thinks about unintended consequences. One of the ways to cut down on unintended consequences is to talk to people that are involved in the process to find out what some of the potential negatives could be coming into this. And so you could talk to coaches. They all unanimously, as far as I can tell, seem like they hate this idea. But he's probably right. They don't give a crap what he thinks. Why? Same crap as always. Lower injuries. Well, it's going to kind of screw up the game. It's not going to be as good. We're screwing over a lot of these undrafted free agents. They're not going to be winning these jobs because they're not able to, properly get acclimated. I mean, that was one of the things that I didn't mention the last time we talked about this that makes a lot of sense is, it's weird to have it be disjointed where, we're here, we practice, and then you leave for a while, and then you come back and we practice. It does make sense, though, insofar as you come in, we're going to teach you the playbook. We're going to run through it. We're going to show you how to do it. Then you go train. You go study by yourself so that when you come back in training camp, you're ready. That's gone now. So now all of a sudden, instead of having months to learn and have on-field time, you come in and we got to cram immediately. And you don't have that period of time to study this. Now, could they adjust it? Could they do some things where you could work with them, interact with them to make sure that they're up to speed? I don't know. And we'll see. Maybe it won't go through, but it's just so stupid. It's so boring how short-sighted the NFL is. It's just, how can we reduce injuries? What if we did this? Okay, let's do it. Do you want to talk to anybody? Do you want to talk to coaches about this? Do you want to maybe try to figure out if that's maybe not the best possible thing to do? It's just so annoying how, I don't know what the right way to put it is, other than just poorly run the NFL is, which is really a shame. I mean, they have such great resources in the coaches, in people that have been in this business forever. And I'm not even talking, that's the problem is the owners who, yes, they have some insight because they've been doing this for a long time, but you've got owners and guys who are in an office in Manhattan that are not in the daily day-to-day of these NFL teams who are making decisions. Why wouldn't the coaches and even the players just get their feedback? I'm not saying they have to run things, but just ask them, because maybe you wouldn't have thought of things like this simple thing here that Matt LaFleur brought up. It's good to hear it and be like, oh, yeah, good point. So what can we do about that? You know what I mean? But do they do that? Do they give a crap? Probably not, because they're the smart ones, and they have their directive, and the directive is lower injuries. I don't give a crap if Jim Stevenson over here doesn't get a job, if his dream of being an NFL player goes up in smoke because he isn't given any time to acclimate, because I'm worried about 6 less hamstring pulls. Next question was about Josh Jacobs, saying that he hasn't really had time to practice. How does he look now that he's had some time to practice?
We're moving him along. He's progressing. He's doing a nice job, but hopefully next week we'll get him out there and when we're going full speed.
And here he is sort of elaborating on his thoughts on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I think he's a fit in any offense. His running style, he runs extremely hard. He's really tough to take down. He's got great hands out of the backfield. I think any time, at least the way we evaluate these runners, you almost have to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield now. And he's great in pass protection. He's a great teammate, great leader. I've enjoyed getting to know him. And so I think there's a lot of great things he brings to our football team.
After that, they asked about the timeshare, which is a pretty good question in terms of, do you plan on splitting carries the same as you did with Aaron Jones, or was that more of just an Aaron Jones thing and we're going to see something different?
We'll see. I think time will tell. I philosophically, no matter who the runner is, typically we like to, platoon those guys, whether it's 2 guys or 3 guys. I just think it allows the running backs to stay fresh throughout the duration of the season. It's a very violent position they play, and some of those hits are high-impact hits, and just to keep them fresh throughout the course of the year. And then when it gets down to the end of it, you got to roll with whoever you feel gives you the best opportunity to win games. And but I do think there's a lot of benefit to having multiple runners in there in terms of just number one, I think it lengthens their careers. But I do think he's very capable of being a high volume feature back where he's getting the bulk of the carries, but we'll see how it plays out.
And that was kind of how they handled it with Aaron Jones, too, where they split his carries and then started ramping up down the stretch, culminating to, postseason where he's getting 25-plus carries in these games. So we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on not only the individual players, but their competition, right? If Dillon and Lloyd are not really looking very good, you probably want to lean one way or another. If all three of them or two of them are looking good, you're going to see a much more higher willingness to keep guys fresh. Skip ahead a little bit. Here he is talking about Mr. Pratt.
Like most rookie quarterbacks, there's a lot of inconsistencies right there. I mean, there's a lot that he's learning. We probably got 40% of the playbook in. A lot of the footwork is new to him. Obviously, the terminology and the things we're asking of him are just foreign. So, he made some plays. That was evident there, and I think some of the guys made plays for him, which you have to have. But that was our first real 11 on 11 full speed was today. So, you're welcome.
Continuing.
Along those lines, what are you looking for from a guy like Pratt in that situation? Maybe with Jordan looking for a touchdown, but with a young quarterback that you just explained getting his feet, what are you looking for in that drill? Yeah,
you're always looking to score, right? But I think more than anything, just the operation, the command, understanding the situation, making sure you take care of the football. That's ultimately priority number one. And that was just a 2-minute end a half, and on Friday we'll do a 2-minute end a game situation.
We'll skip the next one because it's not really worth playing it. It's a pretty short thing, but who do you anticipate wearing the green dot? He says more than likely it'll be Quay, but we'll see how it plays out. But here he is talking about Andre Dillard.
Or not really?
Yeah, well, he was a first-round draft pick for a reason. You can see the size, the athleticism. I think he is perfect in terms of a scheme fit, something that we're always looking for. There's athletically, he can do it all. I think it's just about learning our system, how we do things, the fundamentals, and the techniques that are associated with that position that we look for. And, we're rotating a lot of guys around. So it's not just, hey, you're at left tackle. He's been playing right tackle. We're just trying to find the best fit for everybody and, let the best man win.
Here he is talking about second-year receivers.
From Jaden and Dontavian, some second-year receivers, and how far are they now from where they were this time last year?
I think they're night and day, but ultimately we got to go out there and do it. And I think the training they put in on their time away from here is evident, and I think they've been totally engaged when they've been here, being very deliberate about what they're trying to get better at. Certainly they have a great just knowledge base of what we're trying to accomplish, and I think they understand the why much more, and so they've looked great up to this point.
And kind of an interesting question here, as far as drafting Morgan, our first-round pick, presumably left tackle. The question is, how has Rashid responded after you drafted Morgan? And it's interesting because I've made the point before that outside of quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, you never hear this question asked. It's just the way it goes. So it's interesting to hear this question asked about Rashid Walker.
And with the right mindset, she didn't say anything after the draft. He just came in and got to work, and that's what we're looking for. And I think he's been a guy that's been totally locked in and dialed in, and it's amazing to see just the growth and maturation from when he was a rookie to now. I think it's nice.
So, I didn't mean to cut him off. I thought he was done, but the reason I like that, it's not that I'm trying to keep rehashing this thing up, but when that whole Aaron Rodgers thing went down, my criticism of it was, first of all, it's absurd because this happens to everybody all the time. There are constantly people getting drafted that allude to other people getting replaced. That's just the way that it goes. But what you need to do is show up, shut your mouth, and do your job. And so it was interesting to hear Matt LaFleur essentially say, he came in, he didn't say anything, he just, shut his mouth and went to work. And he says, that's what we're looking for. And I just immediately thought, thank you. We're several years after the fact, but thank you, because that's exactly right. This idea that, you need some kind of a heads up, or you need to, ask permission or do, some kind of frickin' mea culpa about it. Bro, I'm going to do what I got to do, and I'm going to draft who I think is good. And if he ends up replacing you, then frickin' tough. Now, of course it sucks for Rasheed Walker. He's not happy to see that. He's looking at it saying, I did a good job. I did everything right. I protected the quarterback. I'm a Cinderella story, and the first thing you do is draft a guy to replace me. I'm sure that doesn't feel good. But there's a point at which you have to recognize that this is the NFL. This is how it goes. Now you have to show up and win the job and make the Packers look stupid. Force them to kick their first-round pick tackle into guard because they can't possibly take you out of that spot. That's your obligation. You show up, you collect your paycheck, and you do what they say because they paid you to do what they say. And if that means that they pay you to sit on the bench, then I guess that's just the way that it goes, and you keep on fighting, and maybe you end up playing tackle somewhere else one day. But what you don't do is go parading around, stomping your feet, complaining that people are doing you wrong, and how dare they, and blah, blah, blah. Start talking about how the Packers don't treat people right. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Somebody who just shows up, shuts their mouth, and does what they're told. They're not going to bring that up because that would be wildly inappropriate and out of place for them to bring up. It is not your place to question the personnel decisions that we're making because it affects your job. Anyways, why don't we take our final break? We'll come back and rip through as much as we can here. We'll be right back.
Have you ever experienced turbulence on a flight and wondered why?
And you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
No, everything's PG.
Maybe you've sat on the tarmac for hours wondering why your plane isn't moving.
Well, we're outside here. They're saying the ramp is closed. They won't let us park because of Air Force One.
Listen in on the conversations between pilots and air traffic controllers on the Air Traffic Out of Control podcast.
510 Whiskey declaring an emergency. There's smoke in the cabin. I need to make a landing right now on 31 left.
We have the most interesting, wild, and funny ATC recordings you will ever hear. Check out Air Traffic Out of Control wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Next question, which is a pretty important question, it seems. Question about Sean Ryan and where he's made his biggest jumps.
Fighting for possibly starting.
Yeah, I think the thing that jumps out to me most is just his conditioning level is so much better than when he first got in the league. His ability to string together many plays. I remember when he first got here, a couple plays in, he might have 3 great plays, but he was gassed. And so I think that's something that he's had to learn and work really hard at, and I think he's done a really good job with that.
So, that's pretty insightful stuff, right? Kind of like what I said with the Christian Watson thing. It's always nice to hear, oh, they look so good. They look so much better. They look this, they look that. But when coaches say that about almost everybody every single year, it doesn't mean anything. What I like to hear is, here is the specific problem and how it relates to their failure, and here is where they've improved that. So there's definitively going to be improvement. And when you look at Sean Ryan and when he first got here, and it's like, man, this guy he's third string, if not fourth string. If they have enough bodies to put together a fourth string, he was on it. So it was, and it's like, how does that happen to a relatively early round pick? He's a third round pick. And come to find out, it's because dude just couldn't physically play. He couldn't perform. He was gassed. And so we did see a jump in year 2. It was very inconsistent, but it sounds to me the way he's talking like conditioning is still a problem. Just based on the verbiage used, it doesn't sound like he's where they want him to be, but he's improving. So, I mean, it's given me a little bit extra hope that this is something that is legitimate, that it could actually get to the point that it, maybe he could be a good football player. We'll skip down a couple questions here. We'll get to his thoughts on Jordan Morgan.
Jordan so far.
Again, another guy that is very athletic. There's nothing he can't do for him. It's just about putting it all together mentally. I think there's been a lot put on his plate, and I think there's at times his head is spinning, but I think you just got to keep, chopping and grinding and working through it. And there's going to be mistakes, and I think a big part of this is just being resilient throughout that process and making sure that you don't lose confidence, because certainly he has all the skills to be as good as he wants to be.
Continuing.
Left guard for you today, which obviously without him out is just getting him reps. Is there anything without him being in pads that can show you whether or not he can play guard, or do you really just have to, is that just reps for him now and you're waiting for
I think we're trying to get him as many reps as possible, and we're rotating a lot of guys through all the positions, and that's just kind of how we train these guys.
So, if you didn't catch it, that he played, as I mentioned, left guard today, largely because Elton Jenkins was out, but kind of just saying, we like to mix and match as much as possible to see what these guys can do. And I will maintain my belief that the Packers really want him to play left tackle, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be the situation. If he ends up being a really, really good guard and Rasheed Walker looks like he's going to be a really good tackle, it's not impossible that they're just going to just pull the trigger on that, and understandably so. However, depends on Sean Ryan, et cetera, et cetera. So just something to monitor as time goes on. I doubt we get a lot of questions answered in OTAs. We'll probably have to wait till we get closer, working through training camp and all that. But still, in the meantime, for however many we may get, one more, two more open sessions here or whatever, but something to keep an eye on. Question about Anders Carlson, how he's responded to competition after not having any last year.
I think he's done a nice job. I think all those guys, there's been highs and lows for all of them. I think it's a very tight battle. But I think, you don't really know until you start getting more into those high-pressure game-like situations. It was cool to have just a little bit more of that today, being a 2-minute situation, and see how those guys responded.
Next question is about Van Ness. We already talked about that. I understand some people would love to hear the clip for the giggles of it. If you get the joke, you get the joke. If not, then whatever. But I'm not going to go ahead and play it just for the tip comment. A little bit about Tom Clements. When did he let you know he was coming back, and what does that mean to you and Jordan?
Back for another year, and what does he mean to you as a coach? But what has he also meant to how good Jordan is at this point compared to maybe where he was?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think back. We wanted to take some time after the season to kind of mull it over. Obviously, it's a huge commitment with his wife and kids living out in California. But it was after a couple weeks into it, he said he'd like to come back, and shoot, I was ecstatic. So I just think his level of consistency with how he communicates, how he coaches, he just brings a steady presence for, I think, not only the quarterbacks, but for myself and the rest of our staff. He is super consistent. You know what you're going to get from him each and every day. And, I think he's a hell of a coach, and I think an even better person.
And then one of the more interesting things, we had talked about this before, guys like, Brooks and Wooden, and they're in college being defensive ends, kind of questioning whether or not we might see some of that this year. It sounded like we kind of were getting an answer, and that answer was no. But we did see Wooden on the edge today. Again, could have just been because of numbers or whatever, but we got a question about that. And is that just a numbers thing, or could it possibly be something more?
Event today, was that due to numbers with some of the guys being out, or is that something that you believe he could potentially do in games this year?
I think it was a byproduct of both. But I do think he's got that versatility where, if need be, we can put him on the edge and let him rush outside.
So I if I had to guess, it was more a product of the numbers. I think let me put it this way, I think as long as the edge rushers numbers stay high, I don't know that we see that again. I'm not sure that's going to be a thing. We'll see if he gets rotated in, with a full stack of guys. If Rashawn is there and Preston is there and Lucas is practicing and all that. That may be the last time we see him out there, but at the very least, we get a little peek into the depth chart. You know what I mean? If things start to go that way, who's next up, or even between Brooks and Wooden, who do they kind of have as that edge guy? And it certainly seems to be leaning Wooden, unless it was just a drawn straws situation. I don't know. And then final one here, asking about Eric Stokes, and this is another one that it makes you feel good, and then you got to kind of wonder if this is just coach speak or if there's something more to it. But talking about Eric Stokes and how he's doing.
I think he's as good as I've ever seen him, both mentally and on the field. So I want to temper the expectations with that, but I really mean that. He's out there competing each and every day. He looks fully healthy. He's doing a great job of challenging our wide receivers. He's always in great phase, and I think you see that personality is back. I think that's tough on players when they're going through an off season, not having an opportunity to really build upon their bodies, and when you're just focused on rehabbing and getting healthy. He's had a chance to really develop his body, and he looks in great shape. And I think the play says the same.
So we're all just kind of guessing, right? I'm just reading tea leaves here, but I'm kind of on the fence. I would say I'm somewhere in between. That doesn't sound just like regular old run-of-the-mill coach speak. I mean, he flat out came out and said, like I'm dead serious. Like I really mean it. He looks really good, which is great to hear. I mean, I think he genuinely notices a difference in him. Whether or not that translates into him actually being a good football player is kind of another story. But I don't think it's just coach speak in terms of him legitimately looking a lot better than he has the last couple of years. So we'll see. We'll see what that actually means. It sounds like at the very least we're going to get our best shot from Eric Stokes, and that's all we need. Give him one really good shot at being that guy on the outside and let him sink or swim on his own. I'm hopeful, obviously, that he can do it. I'm pulling for him. I mean, for the sake of the team, if nothing else. Also for him, though, I mean, he's a first-round pick. He got a devastating injury, and just hopeful that it can all come together. But man, if we can get Jair and Stokes playing at a fairly high level, I mean, just give me Jair at top 15, give me Stokes top 32, so you got two number ones, Xavier McKinney, if he can continue to operate as a top 10 safety, get Rashawn going, get the interior guys firing on all cylinders. I think as much as it's been a bit of a disappointment for Kenny, he's still a pretty quality pass rusher, and similarly for Wyatt, I think he's a really talented pass rusher. So I mean, if we can unleash the dogs and really see a step up from these linebackers. They've been saying it for years, so it feels empty. But there's no reason this shouldn't be. At the very least, a top 10 defense. You got to see it first. I'm not going to pull a Bears fan thing here and start celebrating it and talking about it as though it's already a foregone conclusion. But the pieces are there, and so having Stokes as a again, he doesn't need to be an elite corner. Be a top 32 corner. If you could be 32nd ranked corner, you have done your job, and I am beyond happy about it. So, anyways, that's the recap. We'll get into some of the player stuff in the locker room tomorrow if we can. But I got to get out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day, your night, whatever. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.